Hey guys, Aaron with Grandpa Rays. For the seminar this week, I wanted to touch on basically where did we go wrong. I put out there for you guys to ask questions this week. Had a few of you reach out to me through Messenger and some posts, and basically just wanted to take a deeper dive into how we're stuck in this cycle where we're seeing issues and then we're trying to alleviate those issues and maybe not quite seeing the connection that what we're actually doing is contributing to worsening the problem or causing other problems to persist. So we're going to take a look at some of the ways that we have mimicked agriculture in our food plotting and how that has led to some negative impacts. So, when we're mimicking agriculture, one of the largest issues that agriculture has, and that we are also compounding our problems with, is tillage. And when you think about tillage, when tillage first started, you'd have people with sticks and really manual tools that were doing tillage to the minimum level to get the seeds in the ground, and they were doing that with pretty limited soil disturbance. And one thing that you'll notice is as technology increased, the need to produce more food increased, the tillage's practices increased, and we ended up compounding our issues that we're doing with tillage. So the main concerns that we have with tillage, as we discussed before, the one of the main aspects of having healthy, thriving soils is to have that fauna of microbiology in the soil that's doing the natural system of providing the nutrients to the plant. We've also talked about the O horizon and how important the O horizon is to be that armor for your soil. The O horizon also provides the organic matter that's going to break down. It's going to add that humus to the soil. It's going to feed the microbes, as well as being that protective layer that is going to reduce the water from evaporating and ending up with a system that we don't have enough moisture in the soil. So as tillage persisted and we moved from the horse-drawn plows into the moldboard plow, what we did in each of these instances is we had a compaction layer. At the bottom of that horse-drawn plow, there was a compaction layer, and we came in and developed the moldboard plow, and we got rid of that compaction layer. Unfortunately, what we did is we moved that compaction layer just down in the soil a little bit, at the same time that we are destroying the O horizon and all of the beneficial microbes that are in the soil. And when we do a tillage practice like this, the only thing that survives is the bacteria. And we have set up the perfect scenario where we have taken and ground up this organic matter into smaller chunks, put it into an aerated soil with a bunch of bacteria. And what happens then is we create that bacterial burst where they just go wild and are consuming this organic matter. And what's happening is that beneficial carbon that we need in the soil is just getting released into the atmosphere from this bacterial food. So moldboard plows were, very popular, and for years we did that. And then the USDA started looking at compaction layers. And again, instead of treating the problem, decided to treat the symptom. And what was the USDA's answer? Well, then we need a chisel plow. So now we've moved that compaction layer from the original, at the bottom of the stick for the manual labor to the 3 to 4 inches with the horse drawn, 4 to 8 moldboard. Okay, now we're putting a 2.5, 3 foot chisel plow on there and feeling good that we're getting rid of this compaction layer. But really what we're doing is we're just driving that compaction layer farther into the soil and moving the problem down, giving the roots a little bit more room to try and obtain nutrients. But unfortunately, because we've killed the biomass of microbes in the soil, the fertility just isn't there. On top of that, we've also destroyed that O horizon, chopped it up, and it's been digested by the bacteria, and all the carbon's been released in the atmosphere. So what we're left with is a little deeper area of soil before we hit that compaction layer. But unfortunately, there is no nutrients in the soil that are available to the plant. We've set up a system where in this bacterial flush, where the carbon has been released into the atmosphere, a ton of nitrate has also been released into the soils and has left a perfect scenario for the weeds that are nitrate-loving weeds to come in and establish, because as we talked about before, that is how the successional growth works. That's Mother Nature's way of trying to mend that soil and get the bacterial to fungal biomass back to where it needs to be, to where it can continue on in that successional growth. The other thing that we do then is, since we've created that low nutrient, high nitrate soil, and it has brought in that weed problem, we again treat the symptom and not the problem, and we bring herbicides and pesticides into the equation, and we end up adding a ton of salt to our soil. And anytime that we as food plotters or farmers or agriculturists are adding any amendment to a soil, there's going to be salt involved. So when we talk about salt, a salt is a compound comprised of positively charged cations and negatively charged anions that are bonded. So we've talked about the cation exchange capacity, and when we're adding salts to the soils, and when we're doing processes like inorganic fertilizers, because those are salts, the makeup of an inorganic fertilizer is a salt. So anytime you guys are spreading granular fertilizer on your soil, you are putting down compounds of the nutrients that we're looking for, bonded into a salt form, into your soil, hoping that these nutrients are going to become soluble and are going to find their way to the root zone for that plant to uptake that nutrient. But what happens is, we think back to our cation exchange capacity conversation and think about how the nutrients are moved through the soil and all the chemical positive, negatively charges that are out there. And as we continue to add salts to the soil, whether it be through herbicide use, pesticide use, or granular fertilizer, we're flooding that system with all of this salt material. So if you picture that you have magnesium and calcium and phosphorus in this system that you're trying to get to your plant, and you've got a soil that has a low volume of salt, it has a better opportunity to find its way there through the natural chemical processes of the charges that go on in the soil. However, if we're flooding that system with a bunch of salts, the salts then are taking up a bunch of spots in that system, and it's way harder for the beneficial nutrients that we want to move through there to get to the plant, because all the bonds are getting taken up by these salt compounds. And it's also going to disrupt the charge of your soil, the conductivity of the soil, which is then in exchange going to disrupt your pH. And when we talk about pH, and when we talk about adding lime to a soil, we need to understand that when we're doing that, we are adding salt to the soil. We are adding a salt that is going to correct that charge back to where it needs to be to grow a plant in the best pH range that it can. But the main thing we got to understand is the reason we have to do that is because our soil is dead, it's poor. It's the only option that we have. We have to look at the chart and say, okay, we know that where we want to be in the chart. Everyone that has any experience with the pH chart knows, like, okay, well, I need to be here. I want to be, in that 6.5 to 7. But what we need to understand is the reason we need to do that is because we have formed an industrial grow system. So we have no other way of getting the nutrients to the soil. So this is basically our cliff note. It's our cheat sheet. And we look at this and we say, okay, where do I need to be in this failed soil system that is going to have the best opportunity for my plants to uptake as much nutrients as it can? And what we need to understand about, why is that nutrient available in that certain segment is because that is where that specific nutrient is soluble. That's where it can be broken down and made to where if it does get to that root system, it can be taken up. And as you get farther from that green zone, what happens is that specific nutrient turns into such a solid form that it's no longer soluble, and there's an inability of that specific nutrient, even in a solution, to break down because the bond at that specific charge is just way too strong. So if we can start looking at pH charts as, okay, this is our cheat sheet because we have poor soil, we can get a better understanding of why we do what we do and how we're actually taking bad salts in instances to correct soils that are already high in salts. And in the end, we're just adding more salts to the system, which is then creating more room for things to get bad. So again, we need to stop focusing on treating symptoms with procedures that in the end makes the system worse. And we need to start considering what we can do to correct the problem and restore the natural system that was set up. The other thing about salts that we need to think about is, take the scenario where we have a person that's lost at sea in a life raft, surrounded by all the water in the world, and they know that if they drink that salt water, that it will kill them. And we're going to have that same scenario in the soil because of the charges of the salt compounds. It is going to tie up the water. The H2O is going to be tied up within these compounds so that that cannot be taken up by the plant then, and it's no longer available to it. That little bit that does get taken up into the plant, in order for that plant to use that water that's been bound to that salt compound, it's going to have to produce double the water to dilute that and to also be able to keep that salt compound with its bond that it's tied up in. So it's a vicious circle that we get into where we're treating the symptoms with things that in the end are making the specific problem that we're dealing with worse, or we're creating a situation where other things happen that create other problems, such as high nitrate soil and weeds, or the breakdown of the aggregates so that our water infiltration isn't there anymore. And we just keep making the issue worse instead of focusing on what we can do to keep it better. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at what we're doing here with biology to try to restore that natural system that's been disruptive with the poor practices that have been done, and then the years of treating the symptoms and not correcting the problem. So in the next couple videos and seminars that'll be putting out, the first focus will be talking a little bit about composting and how we can compost most of the time with stuff that we already have available to us to grow that good biology. We can grow the good fungus, we can grow the good bacteria, we can grow some nematodes. Everything is out there for us to harvest and grow ourselves and produce the biology that we need in order to add that to our system. And that's getting a little bit down, a little bit more intense, to where if we started to do the little things as food plotters of not the heavy tillage and you working cover crops and doing regenerative food plotting, that would set us in the right direction. But it is getting late in the year and it is getting cold. And before it gets too cold, what I want to do is I want to take you guys through what I'm doing so that you can see the process of what I do to, number one, grow the biology, which will be the next seminar on the composting. And then the seminar after that will actually look at how I harvest the biology from the compost, what different types of product I can create with that harvested biology, and then how we apply that biology to the soil in order to restore that soil food web and skip those successional growth phases that cause us problems, with the understanding that we are the ones that are setting that successional growth phase back by the procedures that we do. So we're going to get a little intense here in the next couple seminars, but I think it would be good for everyone to kind of see what we're doing, maybe tie together some of the stuff that we've been talking about, and then we can take a step back and look at, okay, I don't want to go full blown into composting and making my own biology. what is out there for me to do without doing that I can improve my system. But I want to jump into that before we get to temperatures that make the biology hard to work with. I am up here in Wisconsin, and it's starting to get to that point where we're seeing some pretty cold temperatures. And the other advantage that it has is I can do those seminars here in a day and have them saved for you guys and get out and get some tree stand time in as we're approaching that golden time here of the pre-rut that we should see some increased movement and some well-deserved tree stand time. So thanks, guys, for watching today. Stay tuned as we jump into composting and the extraction and tea brewing seminars that are coming up. As always, if you have any questions, please reach directly out to me. I'd be more than happy to talk about any of this with you guys. Until then, Aaron with Grandpa Ray's.